2, 3, 4, 5. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Did I beat it? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 7 o'clock. We'll call to order this meeting of the Town Council of Little Compton. As our first, let me say that we have present with us all 5 councilors, Councilors Golembeski, Mataronis, Moore, Wallach, and Mushin, and therefore have a quorum. And the first action item I would like to entertain is to suggest or encourage a motion to move communications item 1 to the head of the agenda. We have a full agenda, and this one is particularly special if that motion would be.
I'll make that motion.
Motion is made by
Second.
Councilor Wallach, second by Councilor Mataronis to move item 1, communications 1 to the head of the agenda. A vote on that, Councilor Golembeski. Seeing that he nods in approval, Councilor Mataronis,
Aye.
Councilor Moore,
Aye.
Councilor Wallach,
Aye.
Councilor Mushin, aye. So this item then will move to the head of the agenda. It's quite a special one. Certainly in the years that I've been here, I have not received from someone in the 2nd grade a petition and recommendation. And so we welcome Coco Smith. Coco's now on screen with us. This is a letter that we received from Coco, a 2nd grader at Wilbur McMahon School, expressing concern over the speed and safety of South Shore Road, specifically with regard to pedestrians walking to South Shore Beach in the summer months. And Coco, the counselors have been provided with a copy of your letter to us, and they've had an opportunity to read that. I wonder if you might have something that you wanted to tell us before we talk more about it.
I think
Just tell them what you think about the road.
that it's not safe since there is no sidewalk, so we could put in speed bumps near the blind curve
Okay,
before South Shore.
so the road that you're concerned about is South Shore Road, and your solution would be that we consider putting speed bumps on South Shore Road.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
I'll ask if the council has, the members of the council have any questions or comments with respect to the request.
I would just say thank you for your letter. It was a great letter. Really appreciate it. And since I'm the newest one on the council, I've wondered if any kinds of speed mitigation measures have been considered in that area in the past, and if so, what?
Jeff?
So I can, Mr. President, I can answer
Go ahead.
Council Wallach's question. So over the last, when I get emails or letters in regards to certain areas of the town, the first thing I do is do a statistical analysis of the road itself. So last year, total in 2020, there were 3 motor vehicle accidents on South Shore Road. 2 of them came at the intersection of Shaw and South Shore, and the 3rd came at the intersection of Brownell and South Shore. All were very minor, no injuries to any of the operators at the time. Speed has always been a concern on South Shore. It's you know, the year and a half plus that I've been here, I've received several emails, especially in the summertime. Obviously, Long Highway, Maple, anything leading down to South Shore is a concern. The residents of Shaw Road, more so last year. We did add a couple speed limit signs down the bottom of the hill there where people tend to pick up speed before they get to South Shore Road. We stopped 17 vehicles for motor vehicle violations. 8 of those resulted in citations. The rest were verbal warnings. There were only 4 speeding citations issued. The others had to do with registrations and inspections of the vehicles. The robot that Coco refers to in her letter, which I think is fantastic, is the speed trailer. And that is often deployed on South Shore Road during the summertime, especially, you know, again, Long Highway, Maple, those general areas that lead down to South Shore. So we certainly could increase our patrols in the area during the summertime. This summer, we are all well aware that I think South Shore Beach got a lot of attention because of COVID and everyone wanting to get outside. So we'll certainly make it a priority again this summer in regards to trying to make it as safe as possible for anyone either walking or driving down to the beach.
Thank you. Any other comments that any of the council or others would like to make?
Mr. Chair, may I be heard?
Yes, go ahead, Solicitor.
I think this presentation has been the best presentation I've seen in 31 years. It was concise, it was correct, and it was done. And the chief, of course, responded appropriately. And I think perhaps if the chief and the town administrator and myself looked into it, we could probably allay her concerns. But it was really remarkably well done. And in the future, if all people that had concerns could be as concise, it would be pretty good.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, may I be heard?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for your letter, Coco. I thought it was very compelling, and you addressed a lot of the questions that I would have had from your standpoint. But yeah, I agree with the solicitor. I think maybe we can pass this to the chief and the town administrator and the solicitor and see if they have any recommendations on how to move forward.
Thanks, Councilor.
I'll make that a motion.
Councilor Mataronis moves that the matter be referred to the administrator, solicitor, and police chief to return to the council with a recommendation or recommendations.
Second.
And it's seconded by Councilor Moore. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I guess I know all the kids in 2nd grade now. I see my my nephew's son's name on there. So I said, that's not how he writes his name, but I guess it's his son. So very good job, Coco. Thank you for bringing this to the town council.
I'd just like to echo everybody else's comments on that. It's great to see citizen precipitation. No, that's rain. Participation by someone as young as in the 2nd grade. Maybe there's a future counselor sitting there. Who knows?
All right. Are you ready to vote? I'll ask for a roll call vote. Councilor Golembeski.
Aye.
Mataronis.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Wallach.
Aye.
Russian, aye. The motion passes. Coco, you can expect to hear from us quickly on this matter. Obviously, it's not quite summer yet, as we can see by looking outside, but it's going to get there. And when it does, we hope that we'll be able to answer your questions. I would just echo all that's been said. You have done an excellent job capturing our attention, getting us to focus on an issue and move to do something about it. We hope we can satisfy your desire to make that happen. And don't forget that you need to run for town council just as soon as you can. Okay, don't wait too long. Get your name in and get going on being a town councilor. You're exactly who we need to be on the council of this town. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good job, Coco.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the next matter on the agenda, which is the approval of minutes of March 4th.
Motion to approve the March 4th, 2021 town council meeting, unless anybody has any questions or comments on it.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Mataronis, second by Golembeski to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Counselor Golembeski,
Aye.
Mataronis,
Aye.
Aye.
Wallach,
Aye.
motion aye. Thank you. The next item of business is listed as announcements. It came as we were finishing up the agenda and hence it was put here. But it is indeed an announcement because here's what the request was. It was to take an article seen in the patch and describe to the citizens what comments we might have as to how it would be implemented. The article in the patch sought to describe how much in new stimulus bill would be received by each town. And Little Compton is listed as receiving potentially receiving $1.14 million. Let me just characterize a little bit of what I know about this. This is a very timely issue because it was the subject of an extended conversation with the League of Cities and Towns this morning. And the details of how this all works out are still to be forthcoming. But here's some principles. This money, this funding, by the way, the amount that the town expects to receive from another source is $340,000. So I'm imagining that wherever this 1.14 million number was cited, that it includes reimbursements to the school and reimbursements directly to the school through the Department of Education and other state capital improvements. Suffice it to say, whatever number we're talking about, the concern of those who've asked is valid. How are we going to use this money? On the one hand, we're going to be constrained to use it in ways that are permitted to be used. And primarily, these are capital kinds of improvements. I would envision, for example, that this would be used to fund any one of a number of our capital ventures that are not recurring operational costs. And as to whether or not this has an impact on the tax bill for the average or the individual property taxpayer in Little Compton, the answer to that is emphatically yes. Basically, what this would do is offset, for instance, the amount of money that's contributed to the capital fund in order to accomplish certain objectives. And it cannot be used to pay more salaries or to do more kinds of things that are of that order. So this should result in the revenue sheet, which is at the back side, at one of the last pages in the budget committee report that we receive each year in May. You would be able to see this as a revenue source cited there, which would offset tax revenues that are also cited there. So that's how you can check on us to see if in fact what I'm saying is accurate, but I anticipate that's precisely how it'll be reflected. Are there questions either from the public or comments from the council?
I just had a question. Is there any language that you're aware of relating to supplanting existing town funds that are going to any particular expenditure? Sometimes I know that's the case. They say you can't supplant what you're already spending. Right,
and that principle is upheld in what I've seen as the rules for how you spend what's called coronavirus local stimulus funding. And this was argued for very emphatically by Senators Reid and Whitehouse, by Congressman Cicilline and Congressman Langevin, in an effort to try to get to where we would receive some form of allocation that tends to accommodate coronavirus related issues. For example, if we were to improve the ability of the town to hold remote meetings, which we have done patchwork up until now through systems such as you're seeing tonight, if we were able to improve that, that would be something that would qualify. That's not certainly the only thing, but that's the type of thing that would qualify. there would be I would anticipate there would be some sort of screening process that says, here's what we're planning to spend this on. What do you think? And we would get that response.
Bob, I've got a question.
Yeah.
Any word on how the money is going to be distributed? Is it going to go to the state first and then the state's going to distribute it to us, or how's that going to work?
We don't know exactly yet, but your question is extremely relevant. It's been asked by virtually every administrator and town manager on these local calls, because in fact, what we're concerned about is that in fact, the funding gets to the town and doesn't have some form of taxation that occurs before that. That seems to be indeed as it is written. It is quite explicit that the dollar values associated with local are for local things. Now, I think it has to pass through the state to get here, but they are inhibited from specifically, taking part of it for something else that is state related.
I guess it's just a question of how long it's going to take, really, in the end. Because I don't know if the state has the system set up to deal with these sorts of payments, but we'll see.
Well, certainly they have with the first round, and therefore there is some experience there. So they've been careful to point out that this is not the first time they've been through the process. But I think in the language associated with this act, there has been a deliberate effort to be sure that, for example, in Rhode Island, which doesn't have county governments, that county money, which is part of this package, is dealt with for states like Rhode Island, whose counties don't have government financial deciding entities within them. So I think there will be controls that are on it that the state will be required to attest to, and so will we. Any other questions? All right. The next item of business then on the agenda is the single department head report, and that's the department head report of Public Works.
Motion, place the DPW report on file.
Second.
Motion's made by Mataronis, second by Moore, to place on file. Any further discussion? A roll call vote. Councillor Golembeski.
I've lost his video.
Councillor Mataronis.
Aye.
Councillor Moore.
Aye.
Councillor Wallach.
Aye.
Councillor Mushin, aye. The record should show that there were 4 votes in favor and that Councillor Golembeski was temporarily unable to communicate his intention. The motion passes as a result. The next item of business is old business, and I propose that you approve for my signature tomorrow an extension of 1 month on our state of emergency declaration.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is made by Councillor Mataronis, second by Councillor Moore. Is there further discussion? A roll call vote. Councillor Mataronis.
Aye.
Councillor Moore.
Aye.
Councillor Wallach.
Aye.
Mushin, aye. The motion passes 4-0. Thank you. The next item of business is the appointment of 2 additional and what will be the 2 remaining members needed for the Charter Review Commission. We're grateful to Jack Hare and Philip Crawford for their having volunteered, and I would seek a motion to accept those letters of interest and that we would develop a mission statement to be directed to the full membership. Let me just, before we take the motion, let me just explain that. The clerk will be calling these 7 members: Ed Bowen, Monica Hopton, Chuck Barron, Michael Focarelli, Michelle Stecker, Jack Hare, and Philip Crawford. Will be contacting these 7 to set up an initial coordination meeting in which they will elect their officers and form themselves as an entity. That then will be, she would like to then deliver to them a mission statement. And we have some inputs to that I think have been developed as each of us has been looking at various areas of the town. I would encourage all of you to get those either to me or to Carol or to both, areas that you feel in whether it's within your area or not, things in the charter that we would like as a council to point them toward. I would then seek a motion to appoint the two members, Jack Hare and Philip Crawford, to the board.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made by Counselor Mataronis, second by Counselor Wallach. Is there any discussion? Counselor Golembeski, you are muted. I don't know if you are present. No. We'll ask for a roll call vote. Counselor Mataronis.
Aye.
Counselor Moore.
Aye.
Counselor Wallach.
Aye.
Motion aye. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. The Town Clerk, did you have anything more that you needed me to do on that item?
No, that's okay. That's sufficient.
The next item is to provide you an update on the status of hiring firefighter EMT to fill vacancy caused by resignation of a current firefighter. We have, I exercised the right that you have given me in an emergency related to COVID to do a specific thing. And in this case, it was to seek candidates for offers of employment. The fire chief has recommended our first offer of employment would go to firefighter. Let me get his name here. Sorry, firefighter Matt Hughes, who is a part-time firefighter with us now. I anticipate that Mr. Hughes would be able to begin possibly as early as next week, in that he has been serving with us in a part-time status. I would propose that we move to ratify the conditional offer of employment to Matt Hughes, the part-time firefighter, in order to bring him on board in our time of reduced manning.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made by Counselor Mataronis, second by Counselor Wallach to ratify this action. Is there any further discussion? A roll call vote. Counselor Mataronis.
Aye.
Counselor Moore.
Aye.
Counselor Wallach.
Aye.
Motion aye. Motion passes 4-0. The next item of business is appointments in accordance with with section 202 of the charter to replace two members of the Board of Canvassers who have tendered their resignations. Specifically, Lori Anderson has resigned from the Board of Canvassers, and then subsequently, Lori Craffey has resigned from the Board of Canvassers. What I would propose to you is the following, and this is driven by section 202 of the charter. The first action would be to move to approve the appointment of the alternate. The alternate in this case being
Rose Stokes.
Rose Stokes, thank you, to fill the vacancy due to the resignation of Lori Anderson. So is there a motion to appoint the Republican alternate to fill the vacancy caused by the departure of the Republican Lori Anderson?
I'll move that, Bob.
Second.
Motion made by Mataronis, second by Moore. Any discussion?
That I'm back.
Thank you. We'll ask for a roll call vote then. Counselor Golembeski.
Aye.
Mataronis.
Aye.
Counselor Moore.
Aye.
Counselor Wallach.
Aye.
Motion aye. So that appointment's made. The next action I would like to take is, as president and per the procedures of section 202, I nominate Karen Boscheman to fill the vacancy due to Lori Craffey's resignation. Now fill Lori Anderson's position. I now propose that I nominate Karen Boscheman. And what the charter calls for you to do is either approve or to disapprove of my nomination.
I will second that nomination.
I need you to move to approve the nomination. sir.
Move to approve it.
I'll
Right.
second that.
Motion is made and seconded, made by Counselor Mataronis, seconded by Counselor Wallach, to approve the nomination of Karen Boschman to fill the vacancy. Is there any discussion? A roll call vote. Counselor Golembeski,
Aye.
Counselor Mataronis,
Aye.
Counselor Moore,
Aye.
Counselor Wallach.
Aye.
Motion aye. Finally, thank you for your patience. As president and per the procedures of section 202, I nominate Bob Booth to fill the vacancy as the Republican alternate, which was just vacated by our appointment of Rose Stokes.
I'll second that appointment.
I'll move it. He can second it.
The motion is made by Counselor Golembeski and seconded by Counselor Mataronis to approve the nomination of Bob Booth. Is there any discussion? A roll call vote. Counselor Golembeski,
Aye.
Counselor Mataronis,
Aye.
Counselor Moore,
Aye.
Counselor Wallach.
Aye.
Motion aye. The motion passes. We now have a fully staffed Board of Canvassers with 3 canvassers and 2 alternates. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item of business is a report from the administrator on applicants for part-time laborer with the Public Works Department. The town administrator, in his other role, his secondary role as a member of the Town Council of Bristol, is at a meeting of that group this evening. He has forwarded to us the fact that there are 5 candidates for part-time laborer, and I would propose that we direct that he interview using the services also of the Public Works Director, the interview the 5 candidates and offer employment to 1 or more of those candidates as he sees fit.
That
I'll
motion
move
by-
that.
I'm sorry, I'll move that from Counselor Golembeski. Was there a second?
Second.
Motion second from Counselor Mataronis. Is there discussion? Roll call vote. Counselor Golembeski,
Aye.
Mataronis,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Wallach,
Aye.
Motion aye. Thank you. Our next item of business is a report from Don McNaughton, who has been with us from the outset here. Sir, thank you for being here. The Chair of the Conservation Commission, and he's going to report to us on the water study results from 2020 and what actions the committee intends to, or the commission intends to take in 2021. Don.
Thank you, President Mushin. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. First of all, thank you for not having me follow Coco. I appreciate that. That would be a very hard comparison to keep up with.
Right.
And thanks for the opportunity to report on our well water study that we conducted last summer. We've now conducted sampling over 2 consecutive summers, and we are already planning for another repeat here in the summer of 2021. So I want to emphasize right up front that it is too early to draw any conclusions about our freshwater resources in Little Compton at this point. We always anticipated a long-term, multi-year study, and we are still in the early stages. So I can report out on our findings and I can give you some updates, but it's really too early to draw any stark conclusions. Having said that, I do want to mention a couple of findings before I turn to the actual results. The Conservation Commission and I personally have been very gratified with the considerable interest that is being shown in both our water resources in town and in this particular water study. The support we've gotten has simply been outstanding. And second, while we can't draw any conclusions about the results with just 2 years of data, we can say that the results we saw in 2020 went a long way to confirming A, the design of our study, B, the validity of the data we collected, and C, the hypotheses with which we sort of entered this whole study. And at this point, again, a relatively early stage, it's really critical to get some feedback from the data itself that sort of says, you're on a right track. The data appears to be valid. The study design appears to be good. So that's been very comforting for the Conservation Commission to see. I'd like to now share with you a few graphs that will help present to you the data that we collected from the summer of 2020. And tell me, Carol, what I need to do.
Do you have the share screen button on the bottom of your window?
Yes, and it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Really? I
That's what
don't.
it says.
I don't think that's true, but let's see what I can do. I'm going to make you a co-host,
Okay,
and that should allow you to do it.
it does. Look at that.
There you go.
And now I just got to pick the right one. Let's see what happens.
There you
There we
go.
Great.
Good job.
Got it.
All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Thank you, Carol. Okay. So this is the first of 4 charts that I will share with you. And let me quickly describe what you're looking at. This is cumulative precipitation in Little Compton by year. And there are 4 years, or actually there are 3 years depicted on this screen, plus a 30-year average. The red line is the 30. So yeah, the red dotted line is the 30-year average across all of these months. And since this is cumulative, basically January is what January was, and then February is what January and February was, and March is the total of what January, February, and March show. So it grows as the year goes on. And so you'll see a 30-year average in the red dots. And there are 3 other years I've plotted on here. The first is 2018, which is in the green, 2019 in the blue, and 2020 in the yellow. So what you'll see is that both 2018 and 2019, and in fact 2017, were all above average. Interestingly, from 2012 to 2016, it was all below average. So that brings us to 2020, which is in the yellow dotted line. And so what you'll see is that the year 2020 precipitation-wise was considerably drier than both 2018 and 2019, and in fact drier than the 30-year average. And if you look a little more closely, you'll see that the summer months from June to September, there was very little increase in 2020 across June, July, August, and September. And you may remember how dry it was last summer. And that is considerably different than what we saw in 2018 and 19, so much so that there was half as much precipitation by September in 2020 as there had been in 2019. So that's certainly the first point to make about our study in 2020, was that there was significantly less precipitation in 2020 than there had been in 2019. So with this amount of precipitation, we hypothesized that our sample readings for, again, TDS, or total dissolved solids, which is what we sample for in our water study, we hypothesized that TDS should rise from 2019 to 2020 for a couple of reasons. With less water, less precipitation, there'll be less fresh water on the land to hold back seawater from infiltrating the cracks and fissures in our underlying bedrock. And there'll be less water with which to dilute the impacts of septic system leach fields and of any fertilizing that goes on in either homes or on farms. And I'm gratified to say, at least to a certain extent, that what we hypothesized actually came to pass. Now, this chart shows, let me talk about a couple other points before I take you to the graph. First of all, in 2019, we sampled 110 wells, which is in the first bullet point. And in 2020, we sampled 154 wells. So between 2019 and 2020, we grew 40% in terms of the number of households who helped us with our study. And that is just fantastic. In fact, 84% of the wells that we sampled in 2019 were sampled again in 2020. So we had fantastic repeat performance in terms of participants who joined us in 2019 and who agreed to come again with us in 2020. And we got a bunch new wells also in 2020. So again, a lot of interest across town. By the way, the 154 wells that we did in 2020 represent about 10% of total wells across town. And any direct marketer would die to get 2% participation, and we're getting 10%. So that's fantastic. The other good thing is that 92 wells were sampled in both 2019 and 2020. So we'll be able to directly measure the differences in 2019 and 2020 in those 92 wells. So now I take you to the chart. What you'll see in the chart is 2019 plotted in blue and 2020 plotted in orange. And across the bottom, we divide the TDS measures in 5 buckets: less than 100 ppm, 1 to 199, 2 to 299, 3 to 399, 4 to 499, and above 500. I guess that's 6 buckets actually. And what you'll see in comparing the blue bars to the orange bars, and again, this is just for the 92 wells that we sampled in both years. The data in 2020 moved significantly to the right, meaning that there is more data points lying to the right of the chart in 2020 than there were in 2019. So that generally tells us that that TDS sample results increased from 2019 to 2020, exactly what we would have expected them to be given the lack of precipitation. In fact, in 2019, 67% of the wells measured below 200 ppm, which is very, very good from a TDS perspective. But in 2020, only 47% of the wells measured below 200 ppm. So definitely we see a slight degradation in the measurement. Moving on, this is simply a different way of describing the exact same data. With the same 92 wells, that black diagonal line, we have 2019 on the bottom and 2020 on the y-axis. And if the readings in 2020 were exactly the same as the readings in 2019, every one of those dots would have fallen right on top of that black diagonal line. In fact, what we're seeing is all the dots, or I should say a majority of the dots, are lying above the line, which says that the data in 2020 is higher than the data in 2019. And in fact, the median TDS reading in 2020 was 43 parts per million higher than in 2019. So clearly we're seeing a change in the amount of total dissolved solids in our water to a way that is not necessarily encouraging. But again, I want to point out that this is greatly driven by the lack of precipitation that we received in 2020. This next chart, and this is my last chart I have for you, shows a different way of, again, presenting the same data graphically by plotting all of the data that we received geographically around town. And each one of those blue triangles is a well that we plotted. Again, these are the 92 wells that were similar from 19 to 20. And then this particular program has an algorithm which then takes the data in each of those blue dots and it tries to approximate what the geography around each of those dots would be in terms of TDS measurements, to sort of smooth it out to give you a picture graphically graphically of what the situation is across town. So the darker green you are, the lower your reading. And so as you can see in the key, dark green, light green, sort of a yellowish green, then to yellow, then to orange, and then to red, which would be at the bad end of the chart. And what you'll see in 2019 is that there's a lot of green, there's a lot of dark green, and there's quite a bit of light yellowish green, but not too much yellow, and just a few hot spots, if you will, of orange or red. Turning your attention to 2020 on the right, there's less dark green, there's a lot more of the yellowish green, and there's a lot more yellow, particularly along the coasts. So what we're seeing is that the TDS readings are going, what I'll just say, in the wrong direction, particularly along the coast in certain areas. And we're seeing a lot less sort of solid greenish colors around town. Now, the areas along the coast that have turned yellow, we surmise that that is largely because, like, as I mentioned before, there is less fresh water on land acting as a deterrent from salt water moving into the fissures and cracks along the coast in our bedrock, causing there to be higher levels of salt in wells. Now, none of these measurements should be of any real concern, but the trend is not going in the right direction. Let me just mention one thing about TDS, just to sort of set your mind at ease a little bit. Total dissolved solids, according to the EPA, they measure those as a secondary drinking water standard, meaning that TDS is a non-mandatory water quality standard. And EPA measures this sort of as a way to help public water systems manage drinking water for aesthetic considerations. So when you get above 500 ppm in TDS, that's where you'll start to see indications of taste or odor or color coming into your water. And when you're a public water system, you don't want those things because people will start to question whether or not the water is of decent quality. So even though the EPA sets a standard of 500 ppm, it's mostly for aesthetic reasons. Now, if you were to test your water and you had a full battery of tests on your water, the reason behind your water being higher than 500 ppm in TDS might be a real reason for concern if you could point to the reason it is being above 500. But at the level of testing that we're doing, it's very hard to say what is specifically driving the increase in TDS. Again, our hypothesis is that it's salt water along the coast. And inland, where the greens have turned to yellows and the yellows have turned, or the greenish yellows have turned to yellows, we actually don't have any insights there as to what is causing the TDS to be higher inland. We don't think it's salt water, although it is a possibility. Some of the fissures and cracks in our bedrock could extend quite far inland. It's hard to say, but we're thinking there's probably something else going on inland that has to do perhaps with fertilizer use, septic systems, animal waste, a variety of other things that could be going on. So that's sort of those are the charts that I have to take you through at this point. I do want to mention one thing. On the right-hand chart on this page, we did remove one point of data from this chart because of the vast magnitude of the score. It was really misrepresenting what was going on. So there was one well in the Sakana Point area that went salty over the summer, probably from heightened use at a time of very low water. And that one well on our second measurement scored a TDS reading of over 8,000. Now, with the way the algorithm works, that one reading of 8,000 caused the bulk of Sakana Point to turn red. And we certainly didn't want to show that because it was really misrepresenting what was going on. It was one well probably due to overuse at a time of relatively low water. So with that, let me get out of this. Let me stop sharing my screen if I can figure out how to do that. Well, you know what? I'm not sure I can. So I'm going to sit on this chart for the time being. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit more. And I'm almost done. So my takeaways from the study thus far is, first, it appears that our study thus far is confirming what many of us would say is common sense. The more precipitation we have, the more fresh water we have. Remember, with our fractured bedrock underlying the vast majority of town, we do not have a water-laden aquifer from which to pull. We can only pull the water that exists in cracks and fissures in bedrock. Second, there is no other source of water that we're getting. There's no highway of water coming from somewhere else. All the water we have is what we receive through precipitation. So again, the more precipitation we have, the more fresh water we have. But I will have to say at the same time, to have this study's data come to this point, in essence, in confirming that the level of precipitation has an impact on TDS and therefore probably has an impact on the amount of water that we have, it gives us added confidence that the study is worth continuing and that we have designed a study that is worthwhile of our efforts. And my thanks go out to the professors at URI who helped, or actually didn't help us design it. They designed it. We're simply helping them implement it. So my second takeaway is, with our freshwater resources relatively reliant on precipitation, we should be taking a rather cautious view of the future. Climate change models Sorry, that was an incoming call. Climate change models tell us that sea levels are rising, that summers are becoming hotter and longer, and drought periods may become more prevalent. And when you add to that the fact that the summer population in Little Compton swells, one can imagine less water availability going forward. Of course, that all assumes that the climate change models are correct, at least to a certain extent, and that people continue to enjoy their summers in Little Compton, which I certainly believe is going to be the case. So, that points up to some relative caution on our part. But the good news is this is why we are doing the studying, to gather the data, to either support or to refute our hypotheses. So we plan to proceed again in 2021 with the third year of our study in collecting the same data that we've done in 2019 and 2020. But in 2021, we'd also like to measure TDS on a year-round basis to determine any seasonal variability, sort of adding a next level of data gathering to our study. And so we would like to continually monitor one well as a fantastic addition to the work that we're doing at this point. And we've determined that the Sakana Point area, given both the impacts of seawater intrusion, as well as what we saw in their results in 2020, we believe that putting one in Sakana Point area would be an ideal test bed for a continuous logger. So a continuous logger doesn't require us to go out and measure. It is constantly sending us the measurements. And we've added $1,000 to our budget request for the fiscal year 21-22 to enable us to buy this continuous logger and to put it into use. And so my understanding is that our budget request is going forward to the FTM at $6,000, which is $1,000 more than last year. And if that were to pass, we would be able to afford this continuous logger. So hopefully we get the logger, but then again, we also need the well into which to place the logger. And it has to be a well that is no longer in use. So if anyone happens to know of a well in this kind of point area that is no longer in use, that could hold our continuous logger, that would be fantastic. And by the way, I've sent out a variety of letters today to the individual well owners who joined our study, and I asked them to let us know if anyone knows of a well in this kind of point area. So hopefully something comes back. And then finally, we are interested in gathering more data on what's happening away from the coast. What is causing the elevated readings in the central and eastern parts of the town and in the northern parts of the town. Now that would require an ability to test for specific solids that are present. Again, right now, all we can do is get a sort of a general measurement of total dissolved solids. But at some point, we'd like to start to be able to measure specific solids that are present, which would go a long way to letting us know what the causes are of the heightened TDS levels. So we'll be looking at some year in the hopefully not too distant future to do that. And that would also eliminate the need for us to send samples away to expensive labs to test for this more granular reading on what the TDS is telling us. And so we'd have an ability in town to actually read what is in residents' groundwater so that we could get a snapshot of what's going on without sending away to very expensive laboratories. So that is my report for the 2020 water study, and I would be happy to entertain any questions.
Don?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilor Mataronis.
I may have a well for you down here that I don't use on my property, so I'll give you
Oh,
a call
fantastic.
within the
great.
next few days so we can discuss the procedure.
Thank you.
Thanks. Was there another comment or question?
yes, Mr. Chair. We had a case of polluted water down on the point several years ago. Two of the residents were poisoned, had to get Cipro for recovery, and the homeowner would not share the test results with us. So I think Don's made a number of great points. So I think that people have their wells tested, they should share the results with the town.
Okay, thank you.
We have actually, that's a great point, Solicitor. We have actually, we have not gone out and asked for blanket permission, but we'd like to begin to ask residents if they'd be willing to share with us the results of any laboratory testing that they do on their wells, which is separate from the testing, the sampling that we do. But we've had a number of people volunteer that they'd be very happy to share with us the results of their well testing, which, you know,
Don, I think that's a great idea, because Counterpoint's a wonderful place. Mataronis has owned a lot of property down there, and they've always been very open to people coming to the property, being very nice to them, et cetera. But, and by the way, the Mataronis, anytime you ask them for any cooperation, they give it to you. But I think the people down in that area there, it's a very delicate balance. And it'd be great if all the people down there would just share their well results.
Agreed. There is one tool that would make it very helpful in order to do something like that and begin to log the results of that. So I'll just give you an early push here for GIS, which I know at some point will come hopefully to a conversation at the town level. So
That in fact is scheduled as we speak. So if you haven't been invited and would like to be part of that, I'll get the administrator to do that. But yeah, that discussion has reached a point where we're going to be talking about it comprehensively at the, all department level.
great, thank you.
Yeah. And thank you, Don, for the effort that went into this. The Conservation Commission has become a very valuable source of not only data, but also recommendations with respect to how we ought to proceed. I think that's very, very important, so that we make correct decisions as opposed to having to say, well, we really don't know because it's fractured bedrock and we just don't know.
Right.
This is giving us a bit more ability to make an intelligent decision.
If I
I
may,
appreciate that. And I'll pass that along to all my
Yeah.
fellow commissioners.
Thank you.
if I may, sir,
Yes.
couple of points. Don, thank you for explaining it in a way that even I could understand the results. I appreciate that.
If you could
I'm
use-
sure our first speaker understood it more clearly than I did, but we'll let that go. And two, did you ever find access to the well at the top of Windmill Hill there on the triangle? There's I don't know if that's a state well or a government well. It's got a blue cap with a lock on it.
It is a U.S. Geological Study well, and its data is reported online, if not daily, I think weekly. And we have looked at that data, which is a fantastic source for us, because it goes back a long way. I think it goes back to the 60s and maybe the 70s, but there's data there that we've already accessed, which is fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thanks again.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Don, thank you so much for your presentation.
Mhm.
Really appreciate you doing this tonight and appreciate the work of the Conservation Commission. I'm sure you guys have thought about it, but most of the time that a house is sold, folks do a well check, I guess, or they get their water tested. Has there been any ideas to try and work with realtors in town to ask if home buyers would be willing to share those results?
I would say that we haven't gone to that extent yet, Andrew. There certainly is a desire on the Conservation Commission's part to assemble as much data as we can. The aforementioned GIS would help tremendously in that effort. But we haven't gotten to a point where we've discussed exactly what we would do if we were to go after it. But one of the first efforts, though, on that path may be simply to plot in GIS where all the wells are in town, and then try to start to assemble some data with those wells, depth, quantity, so forth and so on, and then match with that any quality data that we could from tests. So, this is a significant effort and project that we think would bear fruit, and it's going to take us years. But it's better to get going than not get going.
Yeah, well, thank you. There's so much that we don't know. I mean, we really know nothing about the water quality. So appreciate the work that you're doing.
I will say this, when we first started out with this as sort of an inkling that we'd like to do something like this, we went to various state organizations, and almost everything at the state level has stopped regarding water quality.
Wow.
Nothing is being done. And we'd hope to find some repository of data. It just doesn't exist. So what we're creating here in Little Compton, we're on our own to a great extent. And I think we're doing things that just haven't been done elsewhere. So.
Thank you. Thanks again. The next item of business is announcement from the Agricultural Conservancy Trust of their unanimous support of Mr. Arthur Goldstone's proposal to install a plaque in or around the town hall expressing appreciation of the Ponce family for working cooperatively with the town and the trust to preserve the land directly north of town hall. I can say that in conversation with Mr. Goldstone myself, we have looked at the possibility of the site would be the northeast corner of the council chambers, which has a window that overlooks what he's talking about. It might be the place that we'd place that. if we don't do it that way, we'd place it right next to the voting mailbox, and I don't think it would get as much opportunity there. But I think if we did something on an elevated place, like the second floor of the town hall, it might serve as a way to commemorate that. But we're certainly open to ideas from others if there are things that we've overlooked. But it certainly would be his intention to get from us some specific, Mr. Goldstone's, some wording from us as to what might constitute the right sort of thing, and then he would ensure that the plaque gets installed. So we don't need to decide it sitting here, but if you would give that some consideration and talk among constituents to see if there are other ideas, we certainly would like to give him an answer as to where we would suggest it be placed.
Well, I think that's a wonderful idea, and it should be placed somewhere where it can be visible. The Ponce family have really contributed a lot. I went to school with both the boys down here at Wolbo, so
Yeah,
Clara used to be a cook at JF Wolbo when I was in first, second, third grade. So they're very well known in the town.
amen. Yep.
Just for the record, sir, this is at no cost to the town. Arthur Goldstone is offered to cover the cost of this.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Right. He both has the idea and is ready to execute. He simply needs to get the go-ahead. So those are wonderful problems to work on. And we should be able to do it quickly. Great. The next item of business is a request from the Budget Committee for the council to attend their meeting, that is the meeting of the Budget Committee, on either April 12th, which is a Monday evening, or April 20th, which is a Tuesday next after that. They simply want to satisfy the various requirements and have us present for what will be, in essence, a final discussion before their voting.
Bob, have they been having Zoom meetings or have they been having in-person meetings?
Yes, they've been Zoom meetings.
Monday will be all right with me.
That's fine with me.
I can do either day.
Either is fine with me.
All right. I will convey to them that our preference would be Monday, the 12th of
April.
21 of April, right? Great. Thank you. Next is to consider scheduling an executive session in person in the council chambers to review collective bargaining and personnel matters. What I thought we would do is we have begun negotiations with two of the unions, and we want to make you aware of what our offers have been. We're under agreement with each of those two unions that we will not reveal the process as it's undergone. But what I'd like you to understand is what we're putting forward, and more specifically in the area of personnel matters, there's a couple of personnel retirement decisions that I would like to discuss with you. And obviously we have to get the concurrence of the people that are being talked about, so they have the opportunity to be there if they wish. So I'm looking to do that in person only because it's helpful, I think, to look across the table at each other and decide whether or not we have questions or in agreement. It also could simplify the way that it's handled electronically, because the clerk can convene the meeting or can record the meeting being convened. We would go into executive session, go offline, come back online, and then reveal any votes that we took, which I don't anticipate we would have any. But so what I'm looking for is, and we again don't have to decide that this evening unless you want to be in consensus right away as to when we might do this. We could do it as early as anytime next week or thereafter. That works. It could be an afternoon, it could be an evening, whatever suits you.
Just so you know, next week I'm open. I have no scheduled Zoom meetings next week, so
Wait a second.
that's best for me.
Okay.
I think
Mr. Chair, is Council Mataronis assisting you with this as well as Tony?
He is assisting in one of the negotiations and not the other. Specifically, he and I are working with the fire department negotiation, and Tony and I are working with, I'm sorry, Paul and Tony are working with the police department negotiations.
Well, I mean, all of you are really well experienced in this, and I think you can probably resolve it quickly. I mean, we've been to arbitration in the past, but it's a long time ago. And it's,
You know, we don't know how to spell that word. That is not our intention to do
I
that.
mean, you've got good guys on your team, and of course, the police and fire have great guys on their team, so I probably can resolve it.
It really is not, I'm not presenting problems as much as I am making sure that the council understands what our position is and is able to say to us, here's what we think you should do or not do if they feel differently. And then really it's the personnel issues that I'd like to get an opportunity to deal with. One is a regular retirement, the other is a disability retirement that I'd like to discuss. So those are just matters that we need to get to, and next week would be wonderful. We could do it then, and if that works.
Bob, I don't think it should be before Tuesday. We're meeting with the firemen on Tuesday. I don't know when Tony's going to be meeting with the police, but it should be after this next negotiation. We can have a better understanding of where we're really at.
Our next one with the police department's April 1st. So that if you want to do it someday after Tuesday next week, that's fine.
Well, I don't care. We can let the rest of the council know what our thoughts are and see if they're on board
I
with
just
it.
want to be careful to not, to make sure expectations are correct here. I don't want to get into a condition where we are violating what we have agreed to do. And that is that each of us brings forward our proposal. And I'm not looking for the council to rule or to hear back regarding what they have proposed to us, because what we've agreed is we will not do that. We won't reveal that to others. What I'm interested in doing is making sure that the council understands, primarily for budget purposes and other things, what it is that we're proposing. And if, for example, they were to say, that the full council were to say, we want to make sure that this or that is the ceiling that we go to, that gives us some guidance as negotiators. I'm not trying to reveal all the things and say, so what do you think we ought to do? That's our job. But I do think it's important that they understand what we're putting on the table. And I'm happy to have people say, nope, I don't agree with that. I don't want to do that. That's all right too. If you say that, then I still need the meeting because I still want to talk about the two personnel matters.
Well, anyway, any day next week, I'm available. I prefer not to do Monday mornings or Friday late afternoons.
Yeah, I can do any evening next week.
And I can do any day except Monday or Tuesday during the day.
Well,
And I can do any evening, I should say.
we can do it Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, Bob.
Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, okay? Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday evening, or afternoon, evening, whatever, at what time?
Well, I know Paul can't make generally afternoon meetings, but I mean, 4 o'clock will work, 6 o'clock, whatever. Whatever's best for everybody else.
Want to say
I'll make a 4 on Wednesday.
Okay,
Works for me.
Yeah, I can do that.
4 on Wednesday.
yep. Very good.
Very good. So be it. Thank you. The next item of business is communications. We've done communications 1. The second one is a request from the Portsmouth Parents Helping Students Organization to support the post-prom committee's endeavor to fund a post-prom party or celebration of the senior class.
We've done this before. Carol can probably let us know the amount, but it's either been 50 or $100. I wouldn't be adverse to recommending $100. Carol, what have we generally given in the past?
We've done it a few times and it's been different each time, but 100 does stand out.
Okay, so I'll move that we give this committee $100 from the town of Little Compton, unless somebody wants to give them more. We do have our kids there, so.
Yeah, I'll second that.
The motion is made by Counselor Mataronis, second by Counselor Moore, that we provide as a donation to the Portsmouth Parents Helping Students Organization, a donation of $100 from the town council would be taken from our contingency funding. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote. Counselor Golembeski.
Aye.
Mataronis.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Wallach.
Aye.
Motion aye. Thank you. The next is a resolution adopted by Burrillville Town Council opposing gun control legislation in a number of bills.
Motion to place on file.
Second.
Motion made by Golembeski, second by Moore to place on file. Is there discussion? A roll call vote. Counselor Golembeski.
Aye.
Mataronis.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Wallach.
Aye.
Motion aye. Next is a copy of a resolution from Burrillville Town Council opposing tax sale legislation, which appears to me to be specific toward sewer and water companies, that sort of thing, as well as fire
Districts.
organizations.
Motion to place on file as well.
Second.
Motion made by Golembeski, second by Moore to place on file. Discussion. Counselor Golembeski.
Aye.
Mataronis.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Wallach.
Aye.
Motion aye. Finally, from Burrillville, a resolution regarding their Zambarano family. The Zambarano family, you know them. No,
Yeah.
it actually is the Zambarano facility that they wish to be held in abeyance. Is there a motion to place this on file?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Made by Counselor Monroe, second by Moore. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Counselor Golembeski.
Aye.
Mataronis.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Wallach.
Aye.
Motion aye.
Well, at least you didn't say Zamboni.
They do have Zambonis in Burrillville, but
I'm sure they do.
all right. A copy of a resolution adopted by the Portsmouth Town Council supporting the passage of the Act on Climate bills in the Rhode Island General Assembly.
I'll place that on file as well. Motion to.
Second.
Motion to place on file by Counselor Golembeski, second by Wallach. Any discussion? A roll call vote. Counselor Golembeski.
Aye.
Mataronis.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Wallach.
Aye.
Motion aye. And then a copy of a resolution supporting from the Portsmouth Town Council supporting legislation to amend the law on municipal taxation of real estate.
I'll motion to place that one on file as well.
Second.
Motion made by Golembeski, second by Wallach to place on file. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Counselor Golembeski.
Aye.
Mataronis.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Wallach.
Aye.
Motion aye. Thank you. The consent calendar.
Motion to place consent calendar on file unless anybody wants to pull anything for discussion.
I'll second that.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there discussion? A roll call vote. Counselor Golembeski.
Aye.
Mataronis.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Wallach.
Aye.
Motion aye. The payment of bills.
Motion to pay the bills.
Second.
Motion by Mataronis, second by Moore to pay the bills. Any further discussion? A roll call vote. Counselor Golembeski.
Aye.
Mataronis.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Wallach.
Aye.
Motion aye. No further business before us. I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Aye.
Have a good night.
Thank you.